Hello, and welcome back to the AusCannaPodcast. I'm your host, Christina McMullen. My guest today is Helen Kapalos, an award-winning documentary filmmaker, recognized journalist, and broadcaster with more than 20 years in Australian media. Beyond media, she served a 4-year term as Victoria's Principal Multicultural Commissioner, championing reform for marginalized communities. With that experience, she brings a unique perspective to the challenges facing patients, clinicians, and the industry right now. Today, we're unpacking what the TGA review really means and how equity and ethics should guide what happens next. It's a big conversation, but we keep it grounded and human. A quick note before we dive in. I love using your listener-submitted rapid-fire questions. So if you've got something cheeky, thoughtful, or out of left field you want me to ask a future guest, send it through via Instagram or the contact link in the show notes. Include your address and I'll send you a little thank you. Also, if you live in Queensland, I've included a link in the show notes to an e-petition calling for the end to zero-tolerance roadside and workplace THC testing for medicinal cannabis patients. If this matters to you, please consider signing and sharing it. Lastly, if you'd like to support the show, you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/AusCannaPodcast. All right, let's start things off with some of those rapid fire questions. You ready, Helen?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Rapid fire. Early morning or late night thinker?
Late night.
One word that defines leadership.
Trust.
A habit that keeps you grounded.
Cleaning.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
I hate cleaning. I'm a tidier. like on the surface, things look tidy, but if you really looked closely, it's not clean. Biggest misconception about cannabis policy.
That everyone's chuffing on high THC flower.
Ooh, good one. If you weren't in media, what would you do?
Oh, easy. I'd be an alchemist. I'd be concocting potions and some kind of, I don't know, essential oil blend, a candle series, that type of thing. I'd be in my lab alchemizing what's in front of me, whatever that might be.
I like it. I didn't know you were kind of into chemistry and stuff. What is your favorite Australian saying?
I love that everyone's name's always shortened, so I love, so like with my name, it's Capo. G'day, Capo. So I suppose g'day, but fair go. I think fair go is where I'd land with my favorite.
What's a headline you hope to read about cannabis in 10 years?
That it is widely accepted and it's part of the university medical curricula.
All right, so last question, and it's a listener-submitted question, and it's from me in Toowoomba, Queensland, and I would like to know if NBC can hire Snoop Dogg as a commentator for the Olympics, do you think Channel 9 could hire me for the Brisbane 2032 Olympics?
100%. That's easy.
I'm going to use that as a sound bit. I've been officially endorsed.
You have. Absolutely have.
All right. Channel 9. I hope
National treasure. You can't go past a national treasure.
Oh, I don't know if I'd call myself a national treasure, but I'm going to take the endorsement.
Emerging national treasure?
There we go. That's why.
If you contemporize it a little and, that's a bit better for the marketing, I guess.
I like it.
Here she comes.
I like it. Do you see me doing more like Snoop kind of vibe or more serious commentating?
Somewhere in the middle, I think, would be your sweet spot. I think you're someone that can go between the two very well.
Again, I hope Channel 9 Entertainment is listening. I just got endorsed.
We're old friends, okay? I was at Channel 9 for a while. That's the
I
big
love it.
deal.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Helen, for participating in the rapid fire
Pleasure.
session.
Easy.
So, for the listeners who don't know anything about you, I mean, obviously, now they know that you've got a bit of a media background, but beyond that, for the listeners who don't know anything about you, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Gosh, how would I best describe myself? So I guess, the best place to start would be media. So in the Australian context, I may or may not be known for being someone that's been part of the media landscape for quite a while. So I spent a couple of decades working as a reporter and producer, documentary maker, and also a newsreader. So I read the news for Channel 10, actually Channel 9 as well. I did Nightline for a while, and I was an on-the-road reporter, worked on the Athens Games and a few overseas gigs. But I've worked for the two public broadcasters, SBS and ABC, Channel 9, 7 and 10. So in all those different capacities. And then after the media, I probably need to mention this as well. I served a 4-year term as the chair of the Multicultural Commission. And then when I left the media, sort of in between leaving the media and going to the commission, I embarked on doing a documentary, and it was about medicinal cannabis because it was an extension of a story that I did for Channel 7, the Sunday night program, and it was like the story had hit a dead end, or the producers were just wanting to take it down a different pathway. And so I did a documentary, which to my great surprise was bought by Netflix and acquired by SBS and Binge in later years. And so that's, if you can blend it all in, that's kind of where my advocacy, I guess I've always had like a social policy lens. So maybe, my background is social policy, media, multicultural policy, and I guess now life dedicated to medicinal cannabis. Because when I did the documentary, it was like I literally mortgaged my home. I wanted to 100% own all of it because everyone, even a small investor that might have come in, were proposing to change the edit and the flavor of the whole documentary. And so I thought, no, I've actually got to do this 100% on my own. So it was a pretty scary ride. I had to sell my place and have a different lifestyle altogether, but it was absolutely worth it and remains worth it to this day. So there you go. I hope that was a very long-winded answer, so I apologize.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Let's talk about the documentary for a second. It was called A Life of Its Own. And you said that it kind of hit a roadblock and that you kind of picked it up because you wanted to run with it. What exactly, for somebody who hasn't seen the documentary, what exactly was it that, I guess, sparked inside of you that was like, this is a story that needs to be told, to such a point that you, like you just said, you mortgaged your house because you wanted to make, like, for us, we both work in media. So to have complete editorial control over something is very important when you're passionate about a story, and
100%.
you want to make sure that it is portrayed correctly.
Well, that's a great question, and thank you, because that's the nub of everything for me. So what I saw with the story when it was being portrayed on Channel 7 was that it started to, so the story was profiling Dan Haslam, who we all know in the sector. So his mum is a prominent advocate, Lucy Haslam. And literally the documentary was really born in her kitchen. So the idea for it, because what happened was Channel 7 came along and we did this big feature story on Dan, and it focused on cannabis being used to ameliorate the symptoms of his chemotherapy. But then what was behind that were many families that were seeking it for actual frontline treatments, or let's say cautiously, perhaps even adjacent treatments. But mostly it was being used for conditions like intractable epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, neurological diseases that were life-defining, life-altering for people. So, life and death stakes, I suppose, is what I really observed. And I was just thinking, my God, this is extraordinary. I had no idea that this many people in Australia and everyday mums and dads were seeking it. So The reason we were able to unearth all of that is that when we aired the first story, there was such a widespread reaction that we decided to run a phone poll, and almost 3 million people voted or took part, and around 96% were in favor when we posed the question, would you use medicinal cannabis, if it was if you needed to for a chronic condition or, for a health, a disease state that, you couldn't treat as a frontline, with normal pharmaceutical medicine. So, or traditional pharma medicine. And when people responded yes, we thought, holy moly, like, where are all these people? And then they just literally came out of the woodwork. And so it was incredible. We were just profiling one couple after another with young children normally. And then what do you think happens? Their homes get raided by police after the stories aired. So it was just awful. You felt so responsible as a reporter thinking, oh no, this happened because we've aired the story. And then but of course, in the newsroom, the news editors were, jumping up and down with excitement saying, hey, it was a great ratings bonanza. Let's do more of this. Whereas my mind was going down a different path where, well, hang on, there's all this amazing research. What about Professor Meshulam? What about the endocannabinoid system? Nobody was interested. And so I remember calling my sister, who's a scientist, and I said, can you have a look at a couple of these journals? I'm just amazed at some of what's going on around the world. I had no idea. And so she sort of helped me decode a lot of what the science was around it. And then I just made this decision to leave. And before I left, I spoke to Kerry Stokes and to one of the senior news editors and said, if I leave, would you allow me to have full rights to that story? And if I negotiate an early exit, how would that look for you guys? And they were really supportive and wonderful, like amazing. And when I actually worked at the commission, Channel 7 were the first ones to send me flowers. So it was a strange thing to do. It was just literally leaving a job, Also, another thing to say is that what it indicated to me is that my lifetime as a journalist on a mainstream platform was probably over, because I was really not, congruent with all of the principles around journalism anymore and, what I'd really signed up for. So part of this documentary was going back to my why. And I remember just thinking, I'll do a 10-minute doco, and then if I don't have any money, I'll just get some, I'll withdraw it from my mortgage and then I'll keep withdrawing. So it became this amazing thing where I just kept going back, and I just became so subsumed with it and so obsessed with this documentary. And then before I knew it was feature length and was traveling to Israel, and it just took over my life. And I think what really drove me was that I thought about my mum and how much pain she was in towards the end of her life. And it just really killed me, thinking, oh my God, like, she just did not have a dignified death. And it just broke my heart thinking about that and thinking about how many other families have to endure that, and how many families and how many of us either have to see loved ones or friends suffer through chronic illnesses in our lifetime. So at the heart of it for me was, hang on, this is a natural human right. And really the only thing that's really blockading it is stigma. It's institutional legacy stigma. So we've got to find a way to move through this. And so I was just, I guess having a sister like mine as well, you'll know when you meet her, very lovely, sweet, gorgeous, and very judicious. So I thought about, when I did the document, if she was my audience, how would I really want to convince someone that, lives in that world, and so I really, I guess, produced it and directed it, with that lens in mind as well, that hang on, if you've got regulators in front of you, if you've got, ministers and so on. So I made sure that I interviewed lots of medical professionals, lots of families, and just, kept, I guess, exploiting the science around it to really bring it to life. So I was lucky at that time that Professor Meshulam was still alive, thank goodness. And everyone in Israel was so incredible. And honestly, it was like this higher force was the executive producer. I can't even explain what happened. It was just doors would open that could not be opened. I'd be filming in areas where they'd literally say to me, how did you get in here? And I'd be like, I just don't know. But I maybe my letter or maybe, but it was just amazing. So it was something that needed to be told. And I can remember being in Greece when I was shortlisting it all because I'd gone to Israel. Then I thought I'll go and see my beautiful dad who lives there. And he was like, "What are you doing?" I was working through the night. I literally was just forgetting to sleep, eat, or do anything because I was doing every production, managing every part of it. So shortlisting all the interviews, you know what it's like to produce something. There's a lot of work. So there was hundreds of hours of filming, but I shot it all in like 12 weeks. And then post-production was more like a 6-month affair because I went to 3 different production houses before I found the right editor where we could create the alchemy and so I really took it seriously. And I didn't know what I was going to do next as a career. I literally ran out of money. It was just like, I remember being at Woolies, just putting 20-cent pieces in to get bread, thinking, "Oh, all those people I shouted over the years, where are they now?" I can't even get a coffee out of anyone. And then I got this call out of the blue. It was so weird. Someone rings me and says, "Can you MC the Premier's multicultural dinner?" And I remember it being just enough money to pay my mortgage that month. I'm like, "Oh my God, that's just weird in itself." And so when I went up to the stage to start emceeing, I thought, I'm going to really talk about my identity as an Australian, but also as a Greek Australian, what both have brought to my life. And then lo and behold, the Premier and the Minister hear this speech and say, "How about you apply for the chair of the Multicultural Commission role?" I'm like, okay, so it was really random. But then that role gave me such a great and wonderful foray into the machination of government, or the inside machinery of how government work, how policy was shaped and formed, because it was a Department of Premier and Cabinet. And then when I left that role, I decided to come back into the industry. So it's all intertwined, and this is what you find in your life. And so it's a scary ride sometimes. Like, I'd sometimes think, like even now, I'm like, between jobs and thinking like, what's next? But I just know that I'm committed to this journey, and I know, the right people will match up, and the destiny will unfold the way that it's supposed to. And I really do believe that that there's another short film or documentary in me to cover what's happening now as well.
I love your diverse background because it's weird how it played out for you, because I do think that again, a weird MC gig and gives you this glimpse as to what, again, another side of something that I'm sure you use that knowledge every day, like navigating the system every day.
Well, because you know why? Because even at that time when I was in the multicultural sector, a lot was happening with Syrian refugees and migration policy. And so like there was a couple of really interesting trips around it as well. And uh, as a journalist, thought I knew a lot about culturally and linguistically diverse communities. I thought, I've covered a lot of, marginalized communities in the past. But boy, did I have a steep learning curve in front of me. And I think, again, what was wrapped around that whole sector and continues to be is stigma and short-sightedness and a lack of understanding of what it actually is, the migration journey and where people have come from, and I guess the nuances and the cultural DNA of our different communities. And it was just the most beautiful, incredible job. I loved it so much. And it's absolutely shaped everything that I do. And so now it's allowed me to be able to write policy, to understand policy, to know how it works, and to be able to mirror the language of government when you're speaking to them, which I think is an important place for us as advocates to be able to play, I guess, or to be able to, sit at the table when we're called to be part of those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because you do have to use certain language. You do have to make sure that you articulate yourself in such a way that a regulator, that's not even a word, a regulatory person would understand, but also a lay person would understand. And it's tough to walk that line.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it comes to influencing like a system like that, do you think, to bring it back to cannabis and the struggles that the I'm having one of those moments where I'm like,
I am too. Don't worry, it's Friday.
articulating two questions in my head, and I'm like, how do I want to say this, and which way do I want to
I
go?
do this all the time. It's so funny. I'm glad to meet someone else that's just like me. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, taking a breath. I just wanted to say that, okay, so everyone's talking about the TGA review right now and what's
Yeah.
happening there. But do you really think patients know what that means? Like, we're
No,
having a review. What does that mean? Do they even understand what's at stake?
no, I don't think patients have any idea what's going on unless you're a more discerning patient that's been around for a while. But I think middle Australia probably thinks, oh, that bad boy cannabis, it's under the spotlight again. So it's really been framed around that again. We in the industry know it's a different conversation, but I think outsiders and the lay person, I guess, but I even have GP friends who are prescribers who are like, oh, we have to be really careful now, and they're really cracking down. I might lose my license. I had one person the other day say to me, this is a GP, would you be able to get, let me know where you get your, I think I was taking some, my medication, THC oil. And he said, would you be able to get me some in your next prescription? I'll pay you for it. I'm like, you're a doctor and you're a prescriber and you're asking me that because there's just so much fear. So I'm like, man, if the GPs are asking those questions, that is a worry, because he just really wanted to be able to continue his medication journey. And I'm like, well, no, you're a prescriber. Why didn't you go and see a cannabinoid specialist? Wow, read the room. So, I just think there's so much mis and disinformation, and I find it's really ironic, that the AMA, they were up in arms when the whole paracetamol debate was going on. Oh my goodness, this is, don't listen to this stuff, and then you're thinking, well, wait a minute, this is exactly what you spread this kind of fear and alarmist narrative around medicinal cannabis. So I feel like the only thing the public recognizes at the moment or sees or feels is a lot of that, hysteria and the hyped up narratives around, the bad boy of, that cannabis apparently is in their mind. So we're going backwards, honestly.
I think one of the things that people miss is that this was a knee-jerk reaction from the TGA. There was a lot of, again, because we work in the media, there was some bad media coverage about a couple of bad players, and then a couple of things happened. And I feel like the TGA had this knee-jerk reaction
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if you read the questions that they were asking, they were very loaded in how they were asked. They weren't, I felt like the questions weren't honest gathering information questions. They were very, like I said, loaded. And I use that word again. It's a media word. When you're intentionally trying to lead a conversation, you give loaded questions because you almost know what the answers are going to be. And I- it's very disappointing as a patient to know that, in the sense that we're coming up on 10 years. And if the TGA had just been like, hey, you know what? We're 10 years into this. Maybe we should fine tune some things, or maybe we should have a structural overhaul. Let's have a look. I think a lot of people would have been like, hey, you know what? 10 years, you're right. Let's have a look at this.
Yeah.
But that's not how they handled it.
That's I've never really heard anyone say that. And that's exactly what a mature sector deserves, right? Because that's spot on. We're not saying to the regulator, don't regulate. No one is saying that. We understand they've got to monitor adverse effects and safety signals. We get that they've got to oversee the product standards and regulate labeling and product information. We understand what is part of their remit. However, what I think a lot of people aren't appreciating is, we know what it took to get here. And after access, which is where we are now, and we're at this inflection point, what we're wanting from the TGA is more leadership around, the systems change that is required to guide us into the future. In many ways, and I say this to many people, I feel like, unfortunately, they've been part of the government infrastructure that has contributed to the problem that we're in right now. We should never have been set up as an import-reliant industry. That is the first mistake. If you want an industry that's based on credibility, evidence, and regulatory trust, then you should be building that industry up with credibility, evidence, and regulatory trust supports. So where are they? Why are suppliers, for instance, not working with, if you're a grower, a cultivator, doing clinical research, etc., and we're interested in data capture and what it means in the Australian context, then where is that work? Why aren't we setting up systems to support that? It just feels like everyone is being lumped into the same category. We're all being punished. Anything above 22% THC is the devil. I mean, if you look at harm reduction, what happens in the opiate wars and so on, it's just ludicrous to think that we're actually in that same basket. And the potential for abuse will be there for all drugs anyway. And I mean, even if you cap THC limits, you're just doing it for, again, to quell some of the hysteria that you have created. And you've done that intentionally to make it look like, let's just, create some fanfare here. Instead of regulatory uplift, which is the direction that they should be going in, it's absolutely going in the wrong direction. So I don't think that it's a very mature response. And public trust isn't built through alarmist narratives. It's built by showing process, safety, standards, and impact, and how that's built into the system. And is this review doing that? I really don't think so. It's just focusing on oh my goodness, there's been all these terrible adverse, and it's like proportionality. It's just disproportionate, and it's hugely disappointing because, I mean, it's natural that as the market grows, scrutiny will grow. That's not a crisis. That's a sign of a market maturing. And every emerging regulated industry goes through this, but they're not cannabis. They don't have the cannabis tag. And so unfortunately they're responding with a defensiveness rather than clarity. And the sector desperately needs that clarity to move forward. And as we all know, there are particular operators. If you're typing in any company, there's still domain swamping. There's still their ads there for $8, 70% off, $8 consultations. And that's still going on. I mean, for goodness sake, why isn't the regulator regulating that? It's just, it's extraordinary to me. So, and when I speak to a lot of my friends who are mums and they've got, teenage boys and so on, and they're all using those platforms, lo and behold. So they're feeding into the crisis that they're spelling out rather than tackling it, from inside out. You got a lot to answer for.
Let's just say you hit on a lot of things in that. I mean, one, I'm sorry, but they had to know. You can't play the I'm stupid, we didn't know it was going to go this way, we had no idea this many patients were interested in it, we had no idea that many people were going to want to explore this type of medicine. You straight up said at the beginning, what was it, 98% of people that were polled were like, hands up, I'll try it. So the government, the TGA, all of that, they can't play the, we didn't know. I think that's grossly irresponsible, to be honest.
100%. It's like, oh my gosh, SASBs, whoa.
Yeah.
But hang on. I mean, but in that, what annoys me in that is look at some of like the companies that have, let's say, succeeded in the entrapment of the commercialization. So we know who they are. They're not companies doing well. They're companies that can afford to buy anyone, put them on their payroll to make it, to masquerade as a company that has ethics and purpose and, vested interest in advocacy, and this just absolutely doesn't exist. And so this is just gross commercialization, just masquerading behind wealthy telemarketers. And they're the people and they're the operators that need to be targeted, but it just doesn't feel like they are being targeted at all. And so, good leadership, I think, in this sector, it's not about being loud. It's not about being, the grossest commercial pig on the, on the lot, sorry. But it's about being credible, transparent, and accountable. And so where are the rewards for people that have played in the system and are doing the right thing, that are cultivating Australian grown products and embedding the science into the Australian context and working, with the regulators, working with researchers, working with university partners to improve the safety um, and affordability of Australian medicinal cannabis, and it just doesn't exist. It's just not there. So that's really sad to me. I don't really know what they're doing other than pretty much trying to shut down the industry for no good reason, because what we're going to end up with is a black market. So great job, guys.
Yeah, it's wild to me also that, again, something else that you touched on, building a system that's reliant on imports. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't said it for a while, but one of the things I used to say in a lot of the earlier episodes of this podcast is, Australia, we're so good at growing so many different things.
Yeah.
Why would we take a plant that we can grow and then rely on imports? And not only that, why would we make it so there are so many hurdles that a local producer has to go through that an importer doesn't? Why would you stack those cards so heavily against your own people, your own industry?
It's so true, isn't it? It's exactly what it is. And I don't know if they really see that. I just don't think they get it. I think they just think, where we're all a bunch of cowboys running around. And I don't think they see that there is a huge level of conservatism in this sector, and people really genuinely doing the right thing, because we'd like to see it being part of the armamentarium that doctors can access. We'd like to see, natural human justice prevail here. And I think what's missing, and I think we're all in agreement around this as well, is that, well, certainly the conversations most of us have, is education, because this is why you do what you do. And without people like you, we wouldn't be getting to understand and become familiar with the plant science and what goes into growing, what grows, terpene profiles and plant compounds and all of the wonderful, plant chemistry that we've yet to learn or know about. And that knowledge base is really important, and it's something that's severely lacking. And also, I guess, prescriber behavior is another part of this that I think the TGA will probably have a bit of I guess it's what they're trying to tackle. But again, it is the prescribers working within a particular system that favors that fast commercialization. And that is not everyone. In fact, it's not the majority of the sector at all. And I think just like with any industry, there should have just been more safeguards. The reality is there are not a lot of people in the TGA as well. I mean, we're not, there's probably not a lot of staff there or enough staff to really patrol or police what's going on. But there should have been, I think, better guardrails set up at the start to avoid something like this happening.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. On the topic of education, where do you think that should come from? Because, I mean, I turn on the mic, I try my best, but, for listeners who don't follow me on my Substack, on my AusCanna reviews, I got a letter from the TGA who said I was advertising.
Oh, wow.
I am adamant that I don't advertise. I go through a system. I go through the same system every time when I sit down with my flowers. It's just personal observations. And I feel like, wow, that's really interesting. You want to send me a letter, but yet there are import companies that literally will put glossy pamphlets in their tubs that are telling you, well, you should listen to this song and you should eat this food while you're having that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I'm the one advertising.
I love that you just said that, because I was telling someone about this last night. So just someone who was just in general asking me about the cat, and I was saying the same thing. Like the labels are just like, wow, we have all these, de facto rec labels sitting there, yeah, with QR codes, to this song and the type of wine you should be drinking or whatever it might be. It's like, whoa. The plant is the character. So that is why what you're doing is actually a noble act. You're trying to tell us about cannabis, which is a complex botanical compound system. It's not a single drug. It contains hundreds of cannabinoids and terpenes that interact with the human endocannabinoid system in ways that we're still properly mapping. And why aren't we going towards that? Why? And so I think one of the mistakes we've made as a society is treating cannabis as a cultural symbol rather than the pharmacological reality that it is a plant, but it's also chemistry. And that is what you're doing. You're unpacking that for us. Not many are. So, yeah, that's extraordinary to me that it would be conflated in that way.
It is what
Keep doing what you're doing, girl.
it is what it is. But I do, when they are gathering that information and that they're looking at information, like one of the things that always stands out to me is, they throw around, what is it, a million patients, but that's not actually the number of patients. That's like a script number. Exactly.
We don't know that.
Exactly.
We can't measure it that way. You can't tell us that. We don't know because the way that the data's captured, we don't know how many patients there are.
Exactly. And you can't even tell me, they're not even gathering information on what patients are treating, or again, what they're actually refilling and versus what they're not refilling. Like you can't tell me any of that. All you can tell me is some inflated number on how many scripts have been written.
Yeah. It's serving an alarmist narrative.
Yeah,
that's what it's there to do. Let's pick out the facts. Let's curate this in a way that spreads fear and alarm and misinformation and disinformation. And that's really essentially what it is. And it's so disappointing. It is so disappointing to see it treated this way.
I think it's one of the things that, again, maybe we're lucky, maybe we're not lucky, but that media background on some level allows the two of us to step back and look at the narrative a little bit closer, to be like, whoa, hold on, you're spinning this a little this way, and you're kind of cherry picking facts this way, and you're not telling a whole complete story. And so I guess at the core, who do you think has the most influence? Do you think it's the regulators? Do you think it's the industry? Do you think it's patients? Do you think it's politicians? Like, who's got the influence to shape and change things?
Gosh, that is such a good question. So initially, it was people ahead of politicians. So it's always been a people-driven market. And so I think that they will always still hold that soft power in this system. So in terms of their relationship to access, they will, I think people will always hold that power. But in terms of where we see the change occur, who has the influence? Well, yeah, again, I'd probably go back to the patients once they understand it correctly, because again, it doesn't matter what the regulator does in a sense, because there will be a market will need to exist and will exist. And so I know that there's tension between the Department of Health and, what the TGA are doing, ministerial departments and so on. I mean, the politicians can definitely, it depends, because I know when I worked at the commission, I went in there blindly thinking, oh, all the ministers set the tone for everything, and I'll just have, I'll probably be told what to do by, chief of staff and so on. But actually, it was the bureaucrats that held most of the power. And that surprised me a lot. And it seems to be the case here as well. So it seems to me like the regulators are going, okay, well, we're holding the cards here and we're going to enact these changes. But ultimately, I don't think that the ministerial, or I don't think the government will acquiesce to that if people aren't behind driving that change. There might be changes, but people, again, if there's a people uprising, they might be dismantled. And if we see evidence that there's more of a rec market emerging, that story won't be over. So this is just this is the first iteration of this story. Like we've got a long way to go. But ultimately, yeah, I think it still sits with the people. It's a good thing, isn't it? That's a sobering thought.
It is a good thing.
We've got to keep doing what we're doing. Honestly, I can't mortgage my home again because I'll probably lose it this time. But I'm definitely going to do another documentary. I don't know how, by hook or by crook, it's going to happen. We have to just keep, we've got to keep this in. We've got to get it back into the mainstream again, and a different conversation to what's previously, I guess, penetrated before. I feel like we still needed, more hero advocates, more Dan Haslams, but probably what we need now is a credible and more credible medical and scientific figures, and they will help us cut through. And I think once we're able to listen and hear those messages, like Olivia Newton-John, for example, so I think it's when you've got advocates like that around. So I'd encourage anyone listening to this wonderful podcast to, again, if you know anyone like that, these are the people we need to hear from. Now is the time for courage and, for our voices to be amplified. And it's not because we're saying, that those terrible people at the TGA, look at this review. We're just saying, hey, guys, please don't, please don't spread fear and misinformation around this topic. We'll go back to the beginning and then we'll go backwards and we'll see this de facto rec market emerge and a black market, and it's just not what it should be. We should be heading towards the science and the evidence and literature that supports it and builds up the evidence base in the Australian context. That's where we should be living with all of this and R&D and, look what's happening in the US. That surely over time might help us untangle more R&D that is actually being done for the purpose of looking at therapeutic benefits rather than the opposite of that.
I always say one of the best things about federal legalization in Canada was that it meant that there was funding there for research.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
whether you were for it or against it, who cares? But now there is money, there is federal money for research.
And that's the answer, isn't it? That is it. That is what will be the breakthrough. And I think what we're seeing right now is that, wow, are we about to go down that path of, away from scientific, credibility and see more institutional bias creep into this sector, which is not, it's not where we want to live. We don't want to live beside that or coexist with that at all. So that, you're right. The Canadian model is great because research answers everything, right? It's a perfect antidote to, everyone's fear, I guess.
Yeah.
And there are still important measures. I mean, this is the irony of what's happened in Australia, really, because of the way that the system's been set up. It's actually probably, unfortunately and unwittingly, targeted the wrong cohort. We really wanted this to be part of the middle Australians, world and narrative, and people like me or everyday peeps that don't normally venture into this category of medicine to understand its benefits and also the individuation, the titration, all of the careful safety systems that need to be heeded when we're actually dealing with an unapproved medication. And it's all there. We have all that knowledge and information, but it lives in disparate worlds and we can't actually join it all up. And so, unfortunately, what's ended up happening is that, it's just gone to people that, know it and love it. And that's what we're seeing. And that's why there's this huge uproar. So that's really sad.
I got a really low bar coming out of this whole TGA thing. My low bar, I just want people to feel safer, to be able to talk about it. That's all. At the end of the day, it might not be for you, and that's okay. But I still want someone to feel safe enough to have the conversation with their GP, to not be forced into one of these shady clinics and not know any better. That's not creating a safe environment. That's not harm reduction. That's none of that.
It's just not. And Yeah, it's not. And I've been working with the beautiful Dr. David Gunn on his harm reduction talk that he's doing at UIC. And gosh, it's so fascinating. And I just think, why aren't, more case studies and more presentations and why isn't there more education? Now that we have 10 years under our belt, this is exactly the right time to consolidate the research and the findings and listen to the local practitioners that have been actually ethical prescribers and are doing the right thing. And I think that's why you and I, like, we both have that low bar for this cup, because it's like, it's just nonsensical, really. It almost feels like it's worse than the days before legalization. It feels like we're literally, we're in rebellion, and we should be in biology, but we're in rebellion. So yeah, I think that they've kind of like not read the room. They've missed, where this is supposed to be heading. And all this will serve to do is create more alarm. It will see more companies collapse, probably good companies that are trying to grow and cultivate and do their research. Then we'll see the other guys that are just sitting behind telehealth models and new market lead generations and, shut this company down, start again. We'll see those dudes grow, and that's what all it's doing. So I don't really know what they're trying to achieve. I mean, unless it tackles some of that, then great. I hope it does, but it doesn't appear to be. It seems to be really aimed at prescribers, and it feels to me like it's absolutely targeted to kind of quell or just disincentivize any practitioner from going near the category, and that is how a lot of them feel.
Yeah,
Super sad. Super sad.
it is super sad because, clearly a reoccurring theme in our conversation right now is
Yeah.
we're 10 years. And again, I don't know. Did you actually gather any data on driving statistics? I can't drive. But where's the data that says medicinal cannabis patients cause accidents?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
we're a holy terror on the road, that you got to avoid us. Like, oh, Lord, she's high. Don't. I mean,
I
first of
know.
all, I must say, do not ever drive under the influence. That's not what I'm saying at all. We all understand that THC hangs out in your system far longer than, you being under the influence. But what I'm trying to say is, again, 10 years.
Yeah.
Did anybody think to themselves, hi, I should probably collect data so that way when we have a review for this, there's the evidence that says, oh, actually, that cohort of patients doesn't contribute to more accidents, doesn't contribute to peril on the roads. Maybe we should, let them drive just like we do with all other medications that we're not testing for.
Yep. That is an area that's so overlooked as well. And I really love, is it David Halpern? Yes. Oh,
Yes.
he's incredible. What an amazing advocate as a former magistrate as well. He feels so, strongly about it. And again, another area where misinformation and disinformation occurs in terms of like impact, like impairment, measuring what that impairment looks like. Where's the data or research or intention around that? There isn't. It's just, oh yeah, let's throw this in the bin of hysteria again. And so, yeah, it's just, we're not dealing with the question of, I don't know, like how to embed this in a modern pharmaceutical system. We're still in the question of like whether the plant is good or bad. That's not the question. The question is, how do we integrate it into our healthcare system responsibly? That's the question. And I just feel like what's happening over there is a lot of noise. And I was disappointed, I must say, at AusCannaPodcast, at the last AusCannaPodcast, which is a fantastic conference. When the TGA spoke, I was disappointed to see so much eye rolling when the TGA were on the panel from some members of that panel. And I thought, wow, not cool, guys. This is serious stuff. This is a serious medicine, which is life or death for people. And that's why I was driven to do my documentary, because I could see that it was really tough for people out there having to access it. And access was the big problem. Now it is, lingering stigma, driving laws, and yeah, probably now what we might see is the truncation of the industry, and that might impact the quality of product and what, the variety and so on. And it would have been so great to see, cultivation systems and manufacturing revitalized here in Australia. It would have been good if our policy actually supported, if you like, Australian sovereignty around this category of medicine. But it doesn't appear to be doing that at all.
I was just about to ask, what is best case scenario?
So best case scenario would be doing something to reform like the institutional bias. So definitely seeing a lot of, like, say, the AMA, RSEGP, university sector, all of them coming together, the health department, seeing how we can integrate this into the healthcare system responsibly. And also creating more public awareness, responsible public awareness. So best case scenario would be, having it embedded in a medical curricula, having, proper R&D systems set up, definitely having a lot more companies that are able to cultivate, manufacture as well. So I would love to see it being the other way around, that it's 80%, product that we're getting, and then those companies being able to work directly with GPs, with researchers, the way that they did when I first did my documentary in Israel. This is what I saw happening, and I thought it's amazing. And then there were nurse practitioners out in the field, and they were able to, they had these amazing clinics, and just the education and knowledge, and also the way that it was handled. There was such great oversight occurring back then in Israel, because you were able to, work with it as an individual, like. So the individualism, I guess, and the fact that that as a medicine, it's not a one size fits all medicine. Being able to see that addressed in the healthcare system, the nuancing around that, around dosage and so on, having some of those safeguards in place. So I'd love to see the community support systems around that, whether it's the nursing sector or it's a combination of nurses and, GPs and healthcare practitioners being part of that. It'd be great to see it being, even part of the naturopathy world. And so, I think being able to break through the bias in medical institutions will be the most ideal scenario, and also seeing more Australian grown, locally grown product would be incredible as well, because we know that we grow to a very high standard here. We know that we're fantastic exporters. Our products are widely regarded. So we know that, we're best in class in that area as well. We're certainly, not a country that doesn't play strong. And we could have the potential, I guess, to own our entire supply chain. And to me, it's just bizarre that we don't do that we abrogate our responsibility there to consumers and to patients. So it's just, that is sad. They're the ones missing out. And I think as well, the healthcare practitioners are missing out as well. I think a lot of them would probably love to understand how to deal with what is a nuanced category, but they need those education supports there. So I think, the ideal scenario is being able to introduce them formally, and not through a whole bunch of companies that we don't really know what the standards are, or what, is it a standardized, the continuity of how that care is applied and how plants are described, etc. It needs to come into something that's far more uniform than what we're seeing at the moment. That's, for me, the ideal scenario.
I was going to say, for me, best case scenario, the TGA, I'm going to say it, the TGA accepts they're in over their head, and they let it go in the sense that they develop a subcommittee that's sole responsibility is medicinal cannabis. And they're responsible for gathering the data and providing the education and giving the science and all of that stuff. Because at the end of the day, the TGA simply regulates access. They don't do anything with quality or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so all they're doing is gatekeeping. At the end of the day, they're just gatekeeping. And for me, the best case scenario, and like I said, I'm going to say it, they're in over their head. They need to just admit it and create a subcommittee and be like, hey, we'll have some genuine patients, we'll have some genuine industry people, we'll have some, policy makers who know how to make policy. We'll put together a small subcommittee and we'll let them gather the data. We'll let them get the education out there. We'll let them organize the meetings that the doctors need to have with somebody to talk to them without the stigma, because they do need that information. Because I think a lot of things can be solved if we just give education and, again, reduce the stigma so people can have safe conversations.
Yeah, 100%. That is where the future lives, and that's what we need. It's desperately needed, 100%. Because the plant doesn't change, but our understanding of it does. And that's where they need to head. And I think you're right. It's not only are they in over their heads, I think, it's that thing of like a little knowledge can be dangerous. And it's like they don't quite get it. This is a category that it could take years to understand it properly, to understand how to work with plant medicine. And as a patient and as a healthcare practitioner, you speak to any of the GPs and, they're either tormented by it or, absolutely passionately enthused by it as well. And we want them the other way around. We want them to, be embracing and understand the complexities and be able to live and navigate that world without, these alarmist narratives being perpetuated. And gosh, it's really scary how powerful they are. They're obviously feeding all of that at the moment, which is, again, I think highly irresponsible for them as a regulator. Sorry, TGA, I'm not saying too many nice things about you today, but
I mean, I love you, TGA. Please don't find me. I'm not advertising. I love you. Go.
All right, but they do have the expert reference group, and I mean, there are some good people that sit on that group. So we can only hope that, that we do have some good advocates in there that are trying to turn the ship around. Let's see. Time will tell. But yeah, we need to change policies. We need to understand it as a science. We need to, again, move away from that rebellion, and we need to understand what the safety looks like. So the careful prescribing and the patient and doctor education are critically important to moving it into that, step change.
I agree. Helen, I could talk to you all day. I really
I can talk to you all day too. It was so good. Thank you. I feel like I was really beating the TGA over the head. Anyway.
Like I said, we do love you, TGA. We do love you.
Yes, we appreciate that you exist. You've got an important role, but we want people that have been in the sector for a long time. I think you can see it with a bit more clarity, can't you? That, you're not quite getting it, guys. No. You need to, let's move back over here. Let's put the lens on and I think, what we need to see is some of this behavior that they're trying to curb can be shut down pretty quickly with just a few operators not being part of the system. It's really that simple.
Oh, agreed. 100% agreed.
Yeah.
Just some swift, quick, decisive action. Boom, done.
Yeah. And
excellent. Now we're moving on.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thank you for having, I feel so touched that I've been invited onto this podcast. So thank you.
Now, Helen, I have a small little confession to make. When we first met, and our first few exchanges were via email, okay, I'm going to own it. I was just like, this is just, no. I was just like, this is just Helen. She's helping organize a tour for me. Oh, great. She's helping organize a podcast. Shout out to Adam. He was a great guest. That's just who you were. You were just somebody that worked for ANTG that was kind of helping facilitate a couple of things. And I was like, Helen's great. I love it. Right. And then I met you. And then after our tour and after, I recorded with Adam, you and I stood outside there for a little bit and we yip-yapped. And I'm like, God, amazing. And if I remember correctly, we yip-yapped so long that you missed your flight. Which I'm really sorry about. But again,
what memory.
I'm like, I just love Helen. I'm like, she's just great, right? And so that's how it was. And then it wasn't until later, like, I guess that would have been, I don't remember exactly when that was, but it would have been February of last year when I was at Melanie Wenzel's book release for Cannabis Queens. And you were there, and I'm standing next to Paul O'Donoghue. Love that guy. He says to me, we're standing there, and he's like, "Oh my God, is that Helen?" And I'm like, "Huh?" And he's like, "Is that Helen Kapalos?" And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Over there, is that Helen Kapalos?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's Helen." And he's like, "Oh, oh." And I'm looking at, like, he is, oh. And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What do you mean is that Helen?" And he looks at me with this face of, "How do you not know who Helen Kapalos is?"
Oh.
Right? Okay, whatever, and whatever. So a few days later, I'm like deep into like my Google on you. And I'm like, "Oh my God, she's important." Like,
No, not at all. No
she's
way. Hey, for me, it was like I got to meet you. That's how I felt. I was like, oh my God, she answered my email. I was so like, yes, we're actually friends. And, hey, I know Christina. Yeah, so it's that as well, like it's beautiful. Like we can, yeah, there is that level, isn't there, of like we don't, it just takes a couple of conversations and yeah, but I felt the same way also and like super, super happy to know you and be part of your community. And that tour was beautiful. It was amazing, wasn't it?
It was a beautiful tour, and I just gotta say, I'm so very thankful to say that you're my friend,
Oh,
and
and likewise, you're a true friend and a really wonderful supporter. And I know we've always got each other's backs. And yeah, because it's a tough industry. Let's be honest. It's
it
not for
is.
the faint-hearted, this industry. I mean, I could do something that's a hell of a lot easier than this. But it's, at times you think, how much more time, like, how much have I got left in me to, but I'm like, I just can't leave before the miracle. I just know that there is still work to do. And I was saying this to you, I know before we hopped on air, like, there's more important work to do and we just got to stick it out. It's tough times. I think the TGA stuff's throwing a lot of people off, but maybe it'll be better than we think. I don't know. I think what we're all probably concerned about is the framing of the category, and that's quite unfair because it goes against the grain of what people are trying to do in terms of educating and empowering the community and empowering healthcare professionals and politicians and people that don't really understand it. And so, yeah, I think that's what we're mourning, that kind of innocence that's been lost. So, but yeah, that's why we've got to keep supporting each other. So thank you a million, trillion, billion times for having me on the podcast, for existing, for doing the work that you do, for being one of the prominent advocates that helps all of us better understand the category and helps move forward our thinking, because that's really what it is. It's a systems change and it's a shift in age-old narratives that need to be poked and, yeah, prodded in a way that we need to deliver the truth. We've got to head towards the truth.
Well, right back at you, kid, because I tell you what, it's people like you that give me hope that things will get better, right? Because you're so dedicated to telling the true narrative and getting the word out there. And like I said, it's people like you that give me hope. It's why I keep showing up. Thank you so much for being on the show, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I want to zoom out for a moment. This conversation makes it clear medicinal cannabis in Australia isn't just a health issue. It's a policy issue, a media issue, and a social justice issue. We're at a point where the system is being reviewed, the narratives are being shaped, and patients are watching closely. What happens next will depend on who is the loudest, who is credible, and who is willing to stay in the room and push for evidence-led, ethical reform. If this episode raised questions for you or gave you language for conversations with clinicians, policymakers, or even friends and family, that's exactly the point. Education is advocacy. Policy only changes when patients, clinicians, and advocates stay visible and vocal. Until we meet again, friends, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. And remember, Janis Joplin once said, "Don't compromise yourself. You're all you have.